Hi, everybody. Welcome to our show. This is Kindness Beyond the Veil, where we'll look at supernatural topics like ghosts, the afterlife, psychic ability, UFOs, starseeds and earth angels, magic and mysticism, but not with fear and loathing everywhere. There's positive and even loving sides to these topics, and that's the light we'll shine on for this show. This is your host, Chip Reichenthal. I was kind of thrust into these curiosities in 1979 when my best friend through childhood came to me at the moment of his death, and I had to know why. Back then, you couldn't talk about that stuff without getting a freak label, so I was pretty much on my own looking into these mysteries early on. Answers would lead to more questions and side realms like magic, stars and planets, energy and physics, and lately, starseeds and earth angels. But I found there's no good and evil in an animal kingdom, no good and evil in a plant kingdom. I've never had a negative encounter with ghosts or the dead, now almost 40 years into this, and there simply doesn't seem to be many looks into these fields without all the fear and loathing. Isn't there enough of that in life? Well, we're going to steer away from that, look at the good in people and these topics. Every week I get to highlight my heroes in these fields for you, introduce you to them, even if you knew all about them. There is kindness beyond the veil. I've seen a lot of it. There's answers to be found on the kinder side of things. And if there's light on the other side, we'll bring it into this side as well. And benevolence, empathy, compassion, the kinder side of science and phenomenon, the kindness beyond the veil. I'm your host, Chip Reichenthal. We're so glad you're joining us. Come on in. Welcome. Oh, we indeed welcome you with open arms to Kindness Beyond the Veil. This is your host, Chip Reichenthal. Oh, we are so gleeful today. We're just in a gleeful mood. Nice festive mood with our glorious and beloved producer, the great Odin. Odin the Almighty. And yes, we have a God producing this show because that's how we roll here. And we are in a festive mood because we know how awesome today's show promises to be with a very special guest who has a myriad of talents, which translates to a myriad of gifts for you, beloved listeners, to reign in a month that should be more festive than stresstive, right? And we've got your back on that score because we know that this month is really aligning in such a way that there is magic in the air. Yeah, I know I say that all the time, but it still stands. A magical new moon in Sagittarius can set a course for exciting adventures for all of us. Venus goes direct, so love is in the air, whether it be romantic or unconditional. Chiron, the wounded healer, gets patched up as he goes direct, so there's some magical healing abound. And our honored guest today is a healer, so that fits in perfectly. And Neptune and Jupiter still both direct, so the veil remains a bit on the thin side, but in a good way. And your instincts and intuition can see a clearer version of the nether realms, and therefore be open to affirmations from our lost loved ones and know that they're indeed with you through the rest of the year and beyond. So make a wish, beloved listeners, and watch the magic that happens as a result. And if that is not enough awesomeness for you, our honored guest will fill in the rest, because today we have for you the phenomenal Daniel Scranton. Daniel Scranton is our guest today, and yes, he's here. Daniel Scranton is a healer on several fronts. He is a Reiki master, and I know we have listeners that have been very interested in Reiki. Daniel's your man for that. Plus, Daniel is a sound healer also, and he uses light language for healings as well. And he does emotional clearings and vibrational upgrades for people and for couples as well. And he can really help us on the path to ascension. In fact, he has an awesome book out called Ascension, The Shift to the Fifth Dimension, with a fascinating outlook on that. I mean, wow, right? Gee, Chip, is there anything else Daniel Scranton brings to us today? Why, yes, there is. I'm so glad you asked me that. Because even with all that, Daniel Scranton is perhaps best known for his channeling. Yes, he is a verbal channeler, and he also teaches channeling to folks. So that'll be awesome. And his channeling of the ninth dimensional Arcturian Council is a weekly, if not daily, feature on YouTube, especially the Higher Self channel on YouTube and his own Daniel Scranton channel on YouTube, plus mailings, and Facebook, and on his website, danielscranton.com, which you can check out. Now, Daniel also has channeled a 12th dimensional higher collective, plus archangels, divinities also, but it's the 9th dimensional Arcturian Council we're hear from the most across the globe, and very likely we will get to hear from them today, right here on Kindness Beyond the Veil. Now, the Arcturian Council features valuable and helpful information from a higher realm of non-terrestrial beings who are known for their enthusiasm for helping us as people find a higher spiritual path, as well as the species known in the extraterrestrial realms for their technological prowess as well. But today, it's all about healing, finding a higher path forward, and helping each and every one of you to be your best selves, to leave a legacy behind that you can be proud of. And we shall discover today as a collective that we're entering a holiday season that, though normally we might dread, we'll discover that the remainder of this year can easily find us in a really good place and line us up for meeting or exceeding our dreams. So our gift to you, beloved listeners, is this magical guest, Daniel Scranton, and we offer it to you with our unconditional love as your gift for joining us and for being such a valued and gifted listenership. So good times ahead today. Now, we remind you our show here runs on 2 networks. We are proudly heard each and every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on the Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network, each and every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern at lnmradionetwork.com. We're on Studio A. Plus, we're on the Paranormal Radio app via TalkStream Live as we speak. And 12 hours later, 7 to 9 a.m. Tuesdays on lnmradionetwork.com for a nice rebroadcast on Studio A. Plus, I co-host a show called The Supernatural Realm, which happens twice a week with the great Tim Roxbury hosting, every Tuesday from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern and Wednesday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on The Supernatural Realm, which plays on lnmradionetwork.com on Studio A, and every Saturday afternoon. Kindness Beyond the Veil is proudly heard on United Public Radio Network, home of the great Joe Montaldo, every Saturday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern on uprntalkradio.com. Plus, we have great archives of previous shows, easily found at uprntalkradio.com in their archive section. Also at our own page, kindnessbeyondtheveil.podomatic.com, and through the lnmradionetwork.com site, through the Neely Productions Inc. /Kindness Beyond the Veil link, which is easy to find. Plus, we're on Facebook on our Kindness Beyond the Veil Facebook page, so we would love for you to like us on Facebook. Now, coming up in the next 2 weeks are super surprises here for our show. I have either guests that were scheduled a while back that are not yet double confirmed, or super duper guests that I have the opportunity to create room to accommodate. But either way, some exciting suspense for our next 2 weeks here, just to keep you in the loop, at least somewhat. And our very special guest today, Daniel Scranton, will be on with us in just a bit. But first, a couple of thoughts to set the stage for our interview with Daniel Scranton today. They say you can find it by following the arc of the Big Dipper, and it's thought of as the 4th brightest star in the night sky, the brightest in the North Celestial Hemisphere, the star Arcturus. Its brightness follows Sirius, Canopus, and Alpha Centauri, even though Alpha Centauri is a binary system, meaning it has 2 stars rather than 1, so really make Arcturus the 3rd brightest solo star in the night sky, only about 36.7 light years from us, and classified as a red giant, which is a star having lost most of its core energy, so it swelled way up, a fate given to our own star, the Sun, some 4 million years from now. But it is Arcturus in the Buddhist constellation where it's thought the home of an extraterrestrial species called the Arcturians. And when it comes to extraterrestrial folklore, and I'll use the word folklore here, even though it may be the wrong word, most of us might be familiar with the Greys, those Greys, classified as a species primarily amoral. That means, doesn't mean that they're not moral. It means that, generally speaking, they're either not thought as enemy or friend. They could kind of care less about us. They're just here to do a job. Primarily, these are beings known in abduction scenarios of humans to work with genetic experiments. These grays are classified, generally speaking, as the Zeta Reticuli. Speaks of the constellation they're alleged to be from. Then there are the reptilian species of extraterrestrial, and again, in most general terms, thought hostile to us. It is said that the reptilians had their own genetic experiments on Earth, focusing primarily on what we know as dinosaurs. And their work was interrupted by warring factions of extraterrestrials who wanted to go in the direction of mammals and mammalian species, including humankind. Thus, the idea of these reptilians being hostile to us, because we're not the dinosaurs, There is also talk of a species called the Dragos that are exceptionally hostile to us unless they are in league with people of great power, whose aim is to keep us in fear and needing leadership. There's also talk of an extraterrestrial species called the Anunnaki, which dates back to Sumerian writings, whom were said to mold humans at first to be a slave species to help find gold for these Anunnaki for their space travels. And once they had enough of their own needs, it was they who created this great flood that wiped out nearly all humankind, save for one human allowed to build a boat to preserve animal life and very limited human life. This is the folklore, the gist of the most common folklore. And again, not sure if that's the word to use, but go with me here. Especially to the adversarial or fearful rhetoric. Now, there are some others, including the Nordics and the Mantis races that could be either friendly or adversarial. They care, but they could go one way or the other. Again, very generalized lore. But like any mystery or any realm, the deeper you look, the deeper the rabbit hole goes. Most fascinating to me are certain races of extraterrestrials that are allegedly here to our betterment, here to teach a higher path spiritually. And more of these beings are mentioned these days in metaphysics, in ascension studies, many even in paranormal. Many of these are honoring the laws of free will that are given to the human race, so they may not appear in physical form and will not abduct people. And even some of the aforementioned races thought adversarial will be kind to humans because we have the capacity for nuclear armament, which could destroy not only areas of Earth and its people, but could punch a hole in the solar system, the universe, and bring whole new dimensions to our destructive capability, which even many of the adversarial species don't want to see. But to the positive, to the benevolent, such groups as light beings, which have no humanesque form, just light, or angelic beings, at least of the non-fallen variety. There's talk of tall whites, thought very spiritual. The Palladian groups on the Pleiades star cluster, the Andromedans from our neighboring galaxy, and the Blue Avians, a bird-like group, humanoid in stature, some of which have been depicted in Egyptian and Hindu lore. The philosopher god Thoth, or the sun god Ra, or Horus, depicted as having bodies of men and bird-like heads. Along with the Blue Avians, a species called the Golden Radiants, who are 10 feet tall, yellow, with triangular heads. The triangle for them represents the Trinity, the number 3, divine and loving. And the Golden Radiance and the Blue Avian are said at this very point in time to be protecting Earth and our solar system from all this extra energy we've been talking about since 2012. They feel, so it is said, that these energies would confound us if fully exposed, if not outright kill us, but really exaggerate our emotional range to its fullest. So people that are self-serving would become more aggressive, violent, depressed, anxious, and primal. And those in the service to others drive, more empathic, caring, loving, compassionate, charitable, and sensitive. In a way, all of this may sound ridiculous to some of you, I'm sure. And in another way, it makes kind of an uncanny sense. We are being bombarded with an unusual amount of solar energy now. And we can make a choice going forward. We can distance ourselves from the fear, from the lower vibrational realms that carry all our darkest and most primal and selfish impulses, or willingly run into it. Or to become, with our grace, more loving, kind, and caring, more forgiving of ourselves and others, away from the impulse of more. those who are choosing as we speak the path to a high vibrational state, the road to unconditional love and acceptance, as it turns out, is the goal of these higher realm extraterrestrial beings. For us as people, as earthlings, there really is a vibrant energy all around us now. And even though we see on mass media all the division, the fear, the uncertainty, most of the people around you are decent and caring. The path to a good survival really is a loving and healing one. Most of us are good, after all, though we're not made to feel that way. Some of what you will hear today from our honored guest, Daniel Scranton, as he talks of channeling this Arcturian species of a ninth dimension, while many listeners are on the path in their own lives to a fifth dimensional living and beyond, may ring a bit strange to some of you. Some of the light language Daniel will use for his channeling may also sound a bit unusual, but go with us on this. We actually know something that may not ring true to many of you, but we actually know that the coming month and coming year, there are 3 words of wisdom that apply to you. Good is coming. And yes, we're talking to you, beloved listeners, each and every single one of you. Good is coming. Tell me, do you find that hard to believe as I say it? If so, why? Haven't you earned good things? Haven't you had more than enough of bad? Do you not feel worthy of good things? Well, we think you are worthy. We absolutely believe that. I am so proud of the quality of this listenership. The least I can do is give the gift of healing, of inspiration, of acceptance, that you really are worthy of good things, especially in an upcoming holiday season most of us dread just thinking about. But this year is not like the others. This year is not like the others, and neither are you. So here's a spoiler alert to beat them all. Good is coming, and you are worthy of it. And you're going to take the good and rock it. We just know that. And now, let's let the good begin. And because, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to present to you the phenomenal healer, channeler, and author, the extremely gifted Daniel Scranton, to Kindness Beyond the Veil. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to Kindness Beyond the Veil. How are you, good sir?
Hey, Chip. I'm doing great. Thanks. Thanks for that great intro.
Well, it really isn't. I've been so excited about this for such a long time, and I'm glad I finally get the opportunity. And you're coming to us from Hawaii. I just had to mention that just for a brief FML moment, if nothing else, because I'm not in Hawaii. Yeah. How are things in Hawaii? How's the weather there?
The weather's great. My wife and I live on Mount Haleakala, which is in the center of Maui. And nice. So we're 3,000 feet up. So we don't get the really hot weather in the summer.
Yeah. Nice breezes, though. Must have gorgeous breezes.
Yeah. It's really great where we are. I was at a Bashar workshop back in 2011 or 12, and he was talking about all the sacred sites across the planet, places like Mount Shasta, Mount Fuji, Sedona, Bermuda Triangle, all the pyramids of Giza, and how you could draw a line. Some of them were chakra points, he said, and some of them were vortices, and you could draw a straight line between all of them, and it would not be straight in the sense that it had no angle to it, though it would be at a slight angle. So it was like a spiral around the planet. And Mount Haleakala, he said, was the heart chakra of the entire planet.
Oh, wow.
And I had never heard of any of this prior to that. I'd never heard of these chakra points.
Hey, nobody refers to my home like that, So.
And then here I am now living on it, and it was completely unintentional to wind up living here. I thought I was going to move to Kauai back in 2014, but had to start out on the Big Island because it's cheaper. There's way more housing because of the volcano. And then through a series of circumstances, wound up on Maui, and then wound up buying a house here on Mount Haleakala. So it's really a beautiful place to be.
Yeah,
And can definitely feel the energy when you set foot on that.
I was just going to ask that because now I don't think I'm mistaken in saying that these pyramids and structures really were meant to kind of be collaborative, so really around the world and aligned, and a lot of that had to do, if I'm not mistaken, with like the magnetic grids. So it begs the question.
Sure.
You mentioned the energy, but can you really, I mean, with that in mind, even feel more of a difference?
Yes, I feel like in my life I've moved closer and closer to places that really resonated with what I was feeling at the time. And ever since I awakened, I really enjoy being in more of a nature setting. So I feel that cities are great to visit and go enjoy the shopping and the restaurants, but I need to be, in a nature type setting where I can feel a little bit apart from the hectic chaos of a city, and where I can tune into the energies of the earth. Especially, I love trees. I love to be in a forest more than anywhere else, and thankfully we live 20 minutes from a great forest here with amazing hikes.
Well, I'm not jealous, really. I swear I'm not. But it begs the question, and there's kind of well, there's no unusual questions here, but as far as really appreciating the nature, as you say, and you do a lot of healing work. So I guess my question is, there wasn't maybe about a month and a half ago we had somebody here. We were talking about witchcraft. A couple of weeks ago we had somebody talking about shamanism, and really when they talk about the elements, especially the four elements, there is such a history of health and disease attributed to these, dating back, pre-Sanskrit days, where, certain illnesses are more thought fire-borne, some are more water-borne, some are more earth-borne, if that makes any sense to you. I think somebody said, like, cancer, for example, would be considered along with the fire elements because it spreads, and something about water can have a healing impact on it. And I know you do a lot of different kinds of healing work, the Reiki and the sound healing and light language and things of that nature, raising vibrations for people and things that. Do you, as a healer, really think along those lines, to the elements? Or do you think it might help things along, but something else is more the driving force in your mind or heart?
Well, I think when it comes to anything, really what we're looking to strike is a balance and a harmony within ourselves. So you want to have a balance of those elements. And what that means is on the external realm, of course, you want to feel like you're getting your fresh air and you're having a lot of water inside and outside. Being submerged in water is really good for us, but also, of course, staying hydrated, being grounded to the earth. And then when you mentioned fire being related to cancer, made me think immediately of, and you said it's because it spreads, but when I think of cancer, I think of that which is unexpressed. Okay. So when a person, let's say a person is angry, but rather than expressing that anger, they hold on to it, and it creates resentment. And I think if a fire obviously is not given the opportunity to breathe, you can smother a fire, then you can put it out. So as far as having the four elements present in healing, I would say you need to, as a healer, you need to let what it is that you're accessing out. You need to let it spread and express it. Otherwise, it stagnates within the healer. And the healer, I think, then has less access to that which he or she needs in order to heal others. So, yeah, I do think there's water. Water is so important. I mean, all of them. I think about how important breathing is, and then I think about how important hydration is, and then how important grounding is, and they're all so important. But when it comes to the actual practice of my healing, it's not very mental. It's not very logical. It's like light language is not logical. It's not meant to be understood. It's meant to be felt. It's meant to be experienced. And when it comes to my healing work, I really let the energies move through me and create whatever sounds, whatever movements they're going to create. It's really just about surrendering to it as a healer and not trying to be too much in the driver's seat with it. And the same is true of channeling. I mean, the more you can surrender to what's happening, the better it's going to be. The more you try to control it or think that you have to somehow hold something back, the less pure it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, as a healer and a channeler both, I guess it begs the question, because as you're talking about the healing process, and I think, from time to time, like my wife gets a migraine or something, and she will ask me to do a healing on her. So I'll take the energies from the palms of my hands and the third eye and the crown, mostly in the heart, and centralize all of that energy with the absolute intent to draw from her this pain, this negative thing. Actually, it comes out of her. It feels like, when your feet are asleep and you feel those little pins and needles, you actually feel them coming out of her. And sometimes they're like big square, large pins and needle type of thing. But, when I do it, and look, I'm not an expert on this, but it keeps me out of the doghouse, which is good enough, at least, for the time being. But I do feel as though, it's not me doing the healing. It's something it's a force that I'm channeling.
Right.
That is divine in nature. Just like when you channel for example, we were talking in the intro about the ninth dimensional Arcturian Council. Is it kind of a similar process, do you think?
I do.
Yeah. Because it's not really an ego thing. It's that you're just kind of borrowing this energy, have it run through you and away from others that is divine in nature. Well, maybe that's me and my humility talking. I don't know. But it seems like a kind of a channeling type of process. And I know we have a lot of listeners that have, been really interested in like Reiki type of healing for a long time. So I'm sure that, they'd love to hear your thoughts on not only my question in regard to the similarities between channeling and healing, and maybe just some more about some Reiki work in general.
Well, I was talking to a client of mine today about Reiki because she was taking a channeling lesson from me, and we both had the exact same experience, where even though I was classically trained in Reiki, and I don't know the different names. I know there's different names, but I don't remember things.
No, it's more about the process than the terminology.
But I had the training where they tell you to put your hands on this part, then this part, then this part, and my Reiki 1 teacher actually told me to buy a little timer, so I knew when 3 or 5 minutes, I forget how many minutes it was supposed to be, had passed, and then you move your hands to another spot. But when I actually did it, I felt like I just know that I have to be focused on moving this energy through me. I think some people, when they get a Reiki attunement, think they just have to stand there with their hands where they're supposed to be. And that in some ways, that's taking the idea that we're just a conduit to such an extreme that the person feels that they're not a participant as well. So you are a participant in the sense that you're opening yourself up to the energy. You're focusing in such a way that you can move it where it needs to go, and you also just need to focus on being present, being grounded, being open, and being relaxed. Those are the keys.
Yeah.
So anyway, I would put my hands in one spot on the person's body, usually around the middle of the leg, because it was a nice meaty spot where you could just put your hands and leave them there. And so I would do this and then focus on letting that healing energy move through me. And what I noticed happening was that first it would be one hand would rise up off of the person's body by itself, and then start moving across the body like a windshield wiper over a windshield. And I would just be sitting there marveling at this thing that was happening that I was not doing. And then that hand would stop and go back down on the person's leg, and the other hand would go up and start doing that motion. And then I started to notice that my head would move around like Stevie Wonder when he sings.
Yeah, I do that.
And yeah, that's the infinity symbol you're making with your head, which is also connecting the right and left hemispheres of the brain.
Good point.
So you're operating with one brain instead of a segmented or fragmented brain. And then my lips started to move. Again, not me doing it. And then whispering sounds started to come out. And that's when I first thought, hey, maybe I'm supposed to channel. Maybe I'm going to be a verbal channel, because I was very familiar with verbal channeling at the time, but never thought of myself as having the potential. Back then, this was 2010, I didn't know of many people who channeled. I knew of Esther and I knew of Daryl, and I may have heard of one other person at that time, but now it seems like everybody's channeling.
Right.
Just 8.5 short years later, everybody's channeling. But back then, I didn't think it was something that was common for people to experience. So I never thought, hey, I'll do this someday. But it just started happening. And it started happening because of my participation in healing. So I do think that everything now is channeling, whether you're channeling your higher self, or you're channeling your ego, or your hurt child self from 6 years old, or a past life version of you, or you're channeling thought forms, or you're channeling the emotion you feel in the room. There's always something that we're channeling. And I think that when we wake up to that, and wake up to the fact that we can do it consciously, that's when we start to tune ourselves more deliberately to what we want to channel. So you mentioned a lot of beings in the intro, and we can tap into those beings. They're out there. They have a vibrational signature. They're wanting to connect with us. They want to participate with us in whatever way that they can without interfering. So the more people who make themselves open and available, or even a person who has no clue about any of this, but is just in that right place in their life to start channeling, will start channeling.
Yeah, and it kind of hit you. I mean, I'm fascinated listening at you talking about the process, and because look, through my years, I've come to know some very good healers and some very good psychics and some very good shaman or whatever. But it's more about the process than the person. And the way you're describing how you came across not only the channeling at first, but you started using a method in a way that was recommended to you, and through the process and during the process found your own way. I've seen really some of the best people in any of the realms that we deal with here have found the same thing, and it's a good message to get across, because a lot of people, want to learn things. They want to learn things quickly, or they maybe they're not doing it for the right reasons or whatever. But at the same time, we have a lot of people that want to learn healing and want to learn it the right way, and it's a good thing to mention, I think, especially to those listeners, because I know a few of them, that it's more about the process than anything else. I mean, that really resonates with me, and how that ultimately got you to begin channeling. Because look, if something's meant to be, it's meant to be. We're going to talk a lot here about the path to ascension. We're going to bring that up a little bit later on, especially because you have a book, about ascension, and the shift to the fifth dimension. And the thing about people that are at least trying to find a higher path forward, and a lot of them have had abilities that have been kind of bubbling under, that they really never knew about, but feel kind of going forward, it's become a part of their path. And because of that, and even though we're speaking in a lot of general senses, I did want to focus on, the process, and for those folks listening that think that they might be good at doing healing or doing channeling, but don't have really anybody that has kind of been through it in the way that you started, where you really learned early on some things were meant for you, whether you saw it coming or not,
Yeah.
and how it works into the process sometimes, even if it defies a belief system or a comfort zone of some kind, so these things are going to end up being integrated in your process, especially if you're a good healer or a good channeler, even if it's something that's not necessarily in your expectation or comfort zone. And just wanted to speak to that for a moment, as somebody's been throwing this.
Yeah, something that you said really stuck out, which is that this takes a lot of patience too. I remember back when I first woke up, I used to listen to a lot of audio books, and I remember people talking about things happening after they had meditated for 17 years. And I had all of my experiences in 2010, the experience that I just described with the Reiki, an experience with extraterrestrials in the middle of the night, and then I began channeling. And that all happened 10 years after I had started meditating every single day. People talk about ascension symptoms a lot. And my ascension symptom was that I was extremely tired. And what that meant was that I'm not the type of person who can hide being tired. I'm the type of person that when I'm tired, it shows. Mm-hmm. And so I would not want to be out in public. I would want to be in my home in a dark room meditating.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. So it was very necessary for me to meditate. It wasn't that I had this. I do have a pretty good discipline when it comes to certain things like exercise and eating and stuff like that. But when it came to this, it wasn't so much my discipline. It was an absolute necessity for me to live in the world, to meditate. Mm. So it took 10 years of that before things started happening for me. And I once heard a session, a group event that Bashar did, and this guy got up and he was talking to Bashar about alchemy. And Bashar said, "You want to be an alchemist? Go and meditate every day for an hour for 20 years. And then after 20 years, you should be able to start to know what it's like to be an alchemist." So it is a journey that requires a tremendous amount of patience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's a lot of what we're hearing about now is, well, what's going to happen and when's it going to happen, and how's it going to happen, and who's going to do what, and it's going to be affected, and everybody wants this to happen yesterday.
Right.
So the guides that I channel, they're talking about a 10-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's not, as soon as this wonderful healer named Allison Coe started to bring forth all this information about the event, and how many people that she was working with were tuning into this event, then everybody started talking about how the event was going to happen in July.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was going to happen in August.
Yeah, they want it yesterday. And
yeah, exactly. The event. And before that, there were well-respected people that I've worked alongside with, people whose seminars I've attended, talking about the shift being done in 2015. That in September of 2015, that was it. It was going to be first wave, one of them said. Another one said, certain people were going to go to this new Earth and other people were going to go here. And none of it happened. And so but the predictions are helpful. I'm not here to disparage.
Well, yeah, but it also highlights the impatience of the people around these. I mean, even if it were an Allison Coe who set this time period, there were people that maybe wrote articles about her or reached out to her and said, no, let's not wait 10 years. Let's do it yesterday. Right. And there's that. So it begs a question, because I saw you in an interview recently. Because I love watching in interviews. What can I say? But it's very interesting, this fine line, because some people say, well, if you make the conscious decision to ascend, then you're already an ascended master. There is not this master thing. We don't dangle these words because, the role is in your heart and not in what you say or how you regard yourself. But there are other people that say, well, no, it's not going to happen for a long, long time. And I thought about that, especially as I watched you address this question in the way that you did. And I think that, look, if somebody told me, and I'm on this path to ascension, all right, but I live in New York. I'm not necessarily the most patient fellow, but at the same time, I'm not one of these, the secret type of law of attraction things where you don't have to do anything at all as long as you imagine that you already have it. It's there. And that's a bunch of crap, because you have to do the work. But at the same time, we have a lot of people that are interested in picking these things up, the Reiki, the Ascension, channeling, learning more about extraterrestrial contact or paranormal or spirit or angelic or whatever that because they see a lot of things on TV where, it's all wrapped up in an hour and everything's done. And,
Yeah.
It sets up not only false expectations, but, there is some patience that had to be had. You're talking about Bashir, who recommends, meditating for 20 years. I got people who can't meditate for 20 minutes, Where am I going to find the time in the day? And that seems to be one of the biggest cogs in the wheel. But on this path, I mean, and my personal experience, because I have kind of the combination of patience and impatience, it's like I would rather have slow and steady wins the race, because you see as you go, the things that you're ready for come to you when you're ready. I've got guides telling me, oh, something big's coming for you. Well, when? Well, you'll know when you get there. And it's like, oh, come on now. There is that kind of impatience thing. But between the school of, once you've made up your mind to be an ascended person, you're a master already, because you've made up your mind to do it. And, talk to me about it after you've tried this, wholeheartedly for 20 years. Where's the balance, do you think, in your mind?
Well, when you talk about impatience, usually it's because a person is in some kind of unwanted situation, which is causing discomfort, pain, or even suffering. So that person just wants out of that situation. So then you have all of us New Ager types coming along and saying there's a shift happening, and when we shift, we're not going to need money, and we're going to be able to heal ourselves instantly, and all these beautiful things that I do believe are in our future.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, they're also an easy out for a person who just doesn't want to face what they need to face any longer. And, you know, all of us have had that experience.
Sure.
One of the biggest breakthroughs of my life came as a result of me feeling suicidal. And getting to that point of really not being wanting to be here anymore led to the experience that I had with extraterrestrials in the middle of the night. And and what I believe was happening at that time was they were getting me ready to be able to channel the creators and all of the other beings that I've brought through over the years. But that I also needed to know that there was a reason to stay. There was a reason to endure what I was enduring at that time. And it's hard, you know, it's hard. Whenever we go through the experiences that we have of suffering, the good thing is that it makes us more compassionate towards others. So when I talk about how other people are anxious to get the shift over with because they're in a state of suffering, I can relate to that. I understand where they're coming from because, you know, it's easy to be the spiritual teacher who says, oh, you just, you know, you have to process and feel and do, you know, raise your vibration, all that stuff. But until you've actually done it and been through it, it's just nice words that make a nice bumper, you know, but actually going through it is like going through hell.
Yeah.
And we all have our hell that we carry within us and around us that we have to go through in order to get to that point where eventually you reach that point where if you have mastered all of this, then you're not in any hurry to get anywhere.
All right. And you know, with my bumper sticker, I guess, was, you know, in order to get to heaven, you got to do some dying first. But yeah, similarly with me, you know, I hit that point of desolation, and it was dead people that, you know, manifested to me, or at least in my mind's eye. But there were some, you know, like earthbound spirit types who said, "You don't want to be us. You don't want to be dead like us." Yeah. And you know, and you had extraterrestrial contact. I think a lot of listeners had been at that point. And, you know, a lot of us are not as vocal as about it than others, but it's the kind of things that have to be talked about, especially when we're kind of going into a holiday season, you know. And I just have this overwhelming feeling that it's not going to be the typical kind of month where all the stuff hits you, you know, like it used to. There is this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You know, the planets are set up that way this year. The energies are set up for it that way this year, you know. But at the same time, whereas a couple of years ago, seems everybody got thrown into stuff that they really didn't want to have to get thrown into. You know, losing homes or relationships or, you know, big losses of some kind. You know, jobs, you know, that their worlds get turned upside down. And now they'd say if it weren't for that, they wouldn't be where they are today. But at the time, it was very upsetting. But this year seems to be, and if you get the same impression or not, please let me know how you feel one way or the other. That this is the kind of year where, you know, it is out with the old, in with the new, but the old is finding its own way out, you know? I mean, people are separating from you if they're just not really meant to be a part of your path. I got a lot of friends that are saying, what is it, my breath? I'm saying, no, this is exactly what you need. You don't need these people, and, you know, they're toxic for you, you know? And rather than, because a couple of years ago, a lot of people were thrown into these horrid situations. There's some of that post-traumatic stuff that kind of pops up and says, oh, no, not again. But I just don't feel it's like that this time. It's almost magical. I mean, bad things for great reasons. You know what I mean? Does that sound a little too fluffy? Or is it for this year in particular?
I think what we're seeing is the effects of polarization and how much it makes people want to come together. It makes people, when you see how bad something is, then usually you don't want to continue doing it. So on the collective scale, the collective of humanity, what we're seeing, I think, is that it's time for people to stop, first of all, pretending that this doesn't exist, that the ideas that we have of separation being a good thing, the ideas that we have of men versus women, that we need to be at odds with each other, that if you're from this country, you need to be at odds with that country. Russia's coming up again. Remember, you're old enough to remember.
I am, yeah. I still have the kneeling position in my mind. We had to hide under furniture in second grade, just in case, the bombs were coming.
Yeah, so Russia's back, and we have a lot of polarity politically, and of course economically, the haves and the have-nots, that just keeps getting wider and wider. So I think what we're seeing is enough of people saying this really does not work. This idea that it's supposed to be us versus them. It's supposed to be we have to rise up and defeat this arch nemesis. We're getting over that. We're getting past that, and when we can get past that idea of separation and come together more, and I think that's ultimately what all of this is leading to. Then we'll see that you can have different ideas, you can have different ways of connecting with God and still like each other.
Right.
You can have different points of view and not have it turn into a shouting match. Yeah. But the only way that people are going to get there is if they take ownership of their own stuff. If they realize that, this fear that I'm feeling, this fear that I have of immigrants, this is my fear. This is I can point at statistics and say, no, it's based in reality, but it's still I have to take ownership of what I feel.
Right.
Unless someone does that, then it squirts out in all these other ways. The stuff that we don't deal with, the anger that people don't allow themselves to feel and make peace with, will come out in other ways if they're not willing to accept that this is an issue that I have. It's not a problem with the world out there that needs to be fixed, and maybe if we just vote the right people into office, then all of the problems will be fixed and we can live happily ever after. No, it's really all of us as individuals, the problems that we have inside of ourselves. It's the trauma that we carry and the emotions that we're not willing to look at. That is the real problem. It's not the Anunnaki. It's not the reptilians. It's not the
right.
It's not the cabal. It's not any of their fault.
Yeah.
We have to take ownership in order to integrate into the beautiful collective that we can be as humanity. And as we do that, we send out that ripple, and the whole galaxy then is united as a result.
Yeah, but both on an individual level and a collective level. And you do emotional clearing for people. I know you do a lot of different readings, but I noticed that emotional clearing is among them. And some of the things that you're talking about is just that. And one of the one of the most fascinating things that I learned throughout, getting past the old stuff, I nobody wants to really take a deep look from within, but not even going to that level is that forgiveness is a lot easier than most people think it is. And again, it's that conscious choice, but not just forgiveness of others, which is tough, but forgiveness of yourselves. Yeah, I mean, people are ready to go into a conversation in this day and age, and they're not ready for it because they can type out what they want to say, edit it out, take a moment to say, should I send this out, and then send it out. It's not like the risk that just heart to heart or eye to eye kind of communication gives you in the real, but forgiving ourselves of things, because I had some background as a spirit medium, and I talked to the spirits of suicides, okay, and tried to counsel some of them into the light, and I found that they have to forgive themselves in order to do that. And that, in that case, especially in spirit, it's a lot harder to do than forgiving others. Forgiving yourselves means you have to take that deep look. But for the everyday living, forgiving yourselves of certain things, because people, the woulda, shoulda, couldas, I should have said that. I could have said this. Oh, I'm so stupid because I didn't say that. Or, oh, I wish I had just bopped that guy. Or, no, just forgive yourself. I mean, whatever happens, happens, I think there is an element in that extraterrestrial world. I think we were talking about it off air, the law of one, which addresses that, good and bad, masculine, feminine. These are dualities, life and death, health and disease. These are dualities that aren't full unless the entire picture is accepted. It's like, all the good and bad within us is a part of us. It's what makes us us. So wear it with a badge of honor. I'm not saying, be a murderer and be proud of it. Not at all. But the little things that we always, condition ourselves against happens. Oh, and like the intro, good is coming. Do you have a hard time believing that? I know a lot of people listening do. Yeah, I have a hard time believing that. I haven't seen good in a long time. Well, just by odds alone, it's time, because there is a balance in the universe, So people are owed an awful lot of good things that they haven't seen maybe in 8 years or so. But it starts with them. I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of the interview when you're talking about healing people, they hold on to things. The angers and the sadnesses and the thing and the self-criticisms or the feeling that they don't belong or the unworthiness, that these are things they hold into it, and it gets cut in the body on a cellular level, and the cells are going, I don't need this emotional crap, I'm a cell, and it eventually finds the weakest part of the body and attacks. But if we release this stuff, which is something that you really started the interview talking about, and you do emotional clearing for people, including couples, which is very impressive, by the way. And a lot of the things that you talk about in the healing process, I mean, is something that we have to take the step. But the steps are a lot easier than we think they are, because nobody's saying, it's okay. It's not really that hard. People are more prone to say, don't do that because you'll show weakness and, you want your strength and you want to be in charge. And it's like, no, man, we want to be, together. We want to be comfortable. We want to be, kind of mellow, if you will. And a lot of that starts with us. I mean, the healing process really starts with our choice to accept a healing process, and some of that is releasing.
And it is about finding a balance, like you were saying earlier about when the whole secret phenomenon hit the New Age, and everybody thought, well, if I just make a vision board and stare at it, then I'm good. So that sort of is in response to, I think, what we had on the planet for hundreds, if not thousands of years, prior to that idea coming around, which is the idea that if you want something, you have to work hard at it. Mm-hmm. And working hard means actual hard physical manual labor in order to just survive. So when you go from that, and then the pendulum swings too far in the other direction, and people are thinking, well, if I just think about what I want, then it can happen. So there has to be a balance, obviously, and that's the balance between the masculine and the feminine as well, because the masculine says, I don't want to feel my emotions at all, so I'm going to go build something in the garage. And the feminine can go too far in the direction of, well, I don't ever want to work again, so I'll just get a husband who's got a lot of money. You know, there's like the two ends of the spectrum that we have to bring together and have the divine combination of the masculine and the feminine within each person in order to really become the divine creator beings that we want to be. So there's a place for action, and then there's a place for sitting back and receiving, allowing things to flow, and also in just vibrating, just saying, I'm just going to put my vibration in a place now that is a match to what I want. But then at some point, you know, you are going to have to get off the couch.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you were talking about, you know, working hard, and you used the term manual labor, and I thought of, to quote Janet Jackson, the pleasure principle, which is the things that bring pleasure to us are often considered sinful or wrong, or, you know, I mean, people like to go out partying, but okay, well, if you're partying, are you using substances? And if so, how much are you using? And when do we go from Johnny's a fun kid to Johnny's an alcoholic, you know, crackhead? Because it's always been kind of scorned, the pleasure, you know. Well, you know, oh, you can't have fun. You should be working. You should derive pleasure from your hard work, you know.
Yeah.
And people are like, yeah, really? No, you should derive pleasure from pleasure. But you know, we got to. When do we end stigmatizing some of this stuff? You know, I mean, that always concerned me as a crack whore. You know, I mean.
Well, no, people always go down that slippery slope, you know. I mean,
right. But people earn the right to have a good time, you know.
But I'm talking about when I say that, I mean people go down the slippery slope in their minds.
Right.
So they think that if you allow, if women wear revealing bathing suits, then all of a sudden their minds go straight to hardcore pornography and try to equate the two. You know, like one is the same as the other. They're not. Right. And being able to derive pleasure from the simple things in life is one thing, and then having a philosophy of life that is hedonism is another thing. I mean, that if you studied philosophy, you and I were both psych majors. I studied philosophy. Hedonism was actually a philosophy.
It was, yeah.
And so you can take things to extremes, and Lord knows we all have. We've all gone to the extreme. And I was one of those guys who, when I went out on a Friday or a Saturday night, I couldn't just have a few drinks. I had to drink everything that was available to me, and then go to the after party. And then, you know, it was never enough. So I had to stop.
Right.
And then I tried at one point in that same year, 2010, you know, I was sitting around with some friends of mine, and they said, why don't you drink wine? Like, everybody drinks wine. Why don't you? And I said, well, I'm afraid, you know, what if I have that glass of wine? It's going to lead to doing shots of Jack at the bar later, and then you know, down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's slippery.
So I had to show myself. I didn't have to, but I decided to show myself that I could. So I had one glass of wine that night, and then another night, maybe a couple weeks later, I had like 2 glasses of wine. And then I said, you know what? I've shown myself that I can do it, that I can stop, but I don't want to keep doing it either. So that was it. That was the last time I drank. And really the last time I got drunk was over 17 years ago. So,
wow. Well, good for you. Congratulations. See, I was a nightclub DJ, so I would be the one that encouraging you to stay and go to the after party. And
man, you would have loved me.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I used to show up in a fake fur coat and leather pants and
maybe
go
I
right
knew you after all this. But the thing is, and I get kids that would be caught up in drug usage, where they go from, casual usage to being labeled something, whether they deserve that label or not, And then there's the whole Skinnerian behavior modification thing, where they reward good behavior and punish bad behavior, but they don't trust you, so they follow you everywhere you go, and you just don't feel like you have any freedom, and it almost pushes you into making mistakes. I used to say, you know what? If you work every day, show up early, leave late, if you pay all your bills, if you do all the things that you set yourself up to do, then have a drink, you've earned it. And there's something about that keeps you from the self-destructive thing, because you know that you've already taken the steps to get there, so there's really no need to get carried away. It sounds a little too simplistic, but nobody's labeling you, and nobody's automatically setting you up for failure, and nobody's automatically putting you in a place that you're not worthy of being in, including yourself. Somebody says, I've earned the right to this good time, and you have the good time, it almost always ends up in moderation that way, whether the person expects it or not. Now, I don't know if I'm going to open up my own set of rehabs. I don't think so. But at the same time, it's just that there is societal pressure that, we're trained to a very young age, from people who want us doing the good behavior when nobody's looking, to have that guilt, right. Or to have, the set of, well, nobody believes that I'm going to do the right thing, so why do the right thing type of thing, Mm-hmm. And all these stigmas seem to be a lot, they're relaxed when somebody would go to see you for an emotional clearing rather to go see a shrink to talk about, why they feel like a failure at work. You know what I mean? Or to go to a doctor because they don't feel right about something and take these poisons that side effects are worse for you than anything the medicine's given to, where you've got somebody, a professional like you, I do like your work. I do like the work you do. We haven't even covered the channeling yet, but the healing work and the aspects of the healing work that you do, where you help people raise vibrations, you do the emotional clearing, you help people see, it's not so bad. There's no reason to yell at yourself or for people to yell at you. You just let this stuff go. Mm-hmm. And there's less reasons to, out of a fight or flight response, self-destruct. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There certainly is, again, the balance to be found within the individual who wants to make that progress, even just making that decision that you want to heal, that you want to feel better and be the better version of yourself that you can be. Eventually, the universe is going to put the right people in front of you, whether mm-hmm. it's me or someone else. For, each person has a different idea of what it is that resonates with them. So, for example, like you were saying, a person may not want to go see a shrink because of a bad experience they had, or a bad experience someone they know had. And so it serves them more to find someone who's got a different approach than, the pharmaceutical approach is sort of the quick and easy solution way. It's like, oh, there's rust on the car, we'll just paint over it, sort of way,
Yeah.
of dealing.
Kind
with
of addresses a symptom, but doesn't aim at fixing a problem.
Right. It's like I'm not comfortable with this symptom, so let's get rid of this, but not really understand where it came from in the first place. Like, why is that symptom there? Don't you want to know?
Yeah, right.
But if you're under the impression that, oh, it's just genetic, or oh, it's just something that happens when you get older, or then the pharmaceutical answer seems to be the miracle of modern science.
Yeah, well, there were years where it was a miracle to me, but that's for another day. Before we get into the channeling, I wanted to ask you a series of questions about extraterrestrials and channeling, and that is part of the healing process, but kind of to put a mini bow on this healing process, there are a lot of things that you do that people see you for, readings or healings or works that you give. As long as we're concentrating on healing at the moment, can you talk of the things that you do? By the way, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you joining us here in this second hour, you're listening to Kindness Beyond the Veil. It's your host, Chip Reichenthal. Our very honored guest is Daniel Scranton today. Now, Daniel's a Reiki master. He does sound healing. He does light language. He's also a vocal channeler, and probably best known for his channeling work of the ninth dimensional Arcturian Council, which we will talk about in a moment. But so many valuable healing works he does, including emotional cleansing, raising your vibrations, and the sound healing and the Reiki healing that really, earn him a nod. DanielScranton.com is his website. You can find a lot of the works that he does. But when people sign up for healings or readings from you, and we're going to get into the channeling in a moment. So aside from the channeling, what could they expect? What kind of things can you do for them?
Well, in a sound healing, which is usually something I offer it, but a lot of times the way that people will get a sound healing would be they would sign up to get a series of tones from me, and I would make a recording of those tones. That each tone carries within it a vibration and holds the intention that the person has. But tones also, the way that I tone, there's overtones within the tones. So there you have a bass tone and then you have an overtone.
So is this like a binaural beat, or how would it differ from binaural?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just started channeling them one day, but I've learned about them, and one of the
so they're light language then, like some of the things you do to warm up for a channeling session. Those tones.
It's not a warm up. They're not warming. I'm not warming up. I'm actually channeling them.
Okay.
So I didn't know how to make those sounds before I started channeling them. I wanted to know how to make those sounds, but the voice coach that I was going to at the time, because I was told very early on that I needed to sing. That was the first thing that I really channeled for myself, was that you need to sing. So I went and took voice lessons for a couple of years, and I did a lot of singing, but we also started doing some toning one day, and then I found out about overtone singing, and I wanted to do it, but my teacher didn't know how to teach me how to do it, so she didn't know how to do it either. So then the creators, I had already been channeling for a couple of years at that time, said, well, they didn't say it, they just started doing it. Mm-hmm. They just started to make these overtones through me, and I walked into my voice coach's studio the next time, and I was like, listen to this. She was blown away. So that's how that started, and what I've learned about the overtones is that they work on a person on a multi-dimensional level. So they're not it's not just that you're getting the vibrations in the fourth dimension here where we all are.
Mhm.
It's that you're receiving the healing on other dimensions of your being, other past lives that you've led where you've been in other dimensions and so on. So
Other octaves of your essence, if you will.
yeah, exactly. It's reaching you, and it's like things you can't hear but are still affecting you, sort of thing. Because most people don't have a trained ear, and they don't understand the significance of what's happening with overtones. But for a person who is a musician, they hear it and they go, "Wow, something really special is happening."
Mhm.
Right. So
Yeah, I as a musician myself, there is just this essence of almost divined by God. There's these things that go through you when you're doing your tones, or when I was writing songs, maybe, that just seem like it's something beyond your own self. It's coming from the higher realms, and it's a nice humility to that, Plus, my spirits and my extraterrestrials will say, "Chip, don't sing. Whatever you do, man, don't do it." But that's again for another show. But I do, because these tones they seem almost mantra-esque, if you will.
Yeah.
The work that comes from you. There's something that is kind of corded in nature, if you will.
And there's something universal about them too, because
Mhm.
I have a good friend who's also an amazing channel named Rob Gauthier. And
no kidding. I'm
before
familiar with him.
you are okay.
I'm familiar with him. He doesn't know who I am, but yeah, I know Rob Gauthier.
Yeah,
Familiar with his work.
He and I met a long time ago, and then I started listening to some of his channeling, and the sound that he makes when he goes into the channeling state is very similar to the sounds that come through me. There's a way the tones kind of rise and fall that's similar in Rob's, and I also heard this renowned sound healer and musician Jonathan Goldman talk about it, and it's like they call it the sound of source or something like that.
Yeah, I think John Goldman did some work with some binaurals or the Schumann resonance.
I'm sure he does everything. Yeah.
Well, the thing about binaurals is it's really almost hypnotic in the sense that you give an A flat proper, the one that comes from nature. It's 144 degrees of resonance or whatever. I mean, it's sacred geometries involved. It's perfect A flat. And then you give an A flat that's the same thing but reduced by about 2 degrees. So the dissonance is not heard outright, but your subconscious picks it up. And it does. It kind of separates the left hemisphere and right hemisphere, from one ear to the other, and stimulates the pineal gland. So it kind of wakes that up, which is interesting.
Well, the story behind the light language is a funny one. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, especially as you were talking about pleasure for pleasure's sake. So I used to have this real addiction to receiving massage.
Yeah.
And then I also used to have this tendency
to fall.
I used to have this addiction to, I used to have this tendency to fall in love with my massage therapist.
Right. Yeah.
So I fell in love with this one woman who had only, we'd only been working together for 3 months at this point. But I would go into these massages with such focus. I'd be so focused on feeling every bit of pleasure that I could from being touched by this beautiful woman. And what wound up happening was she already knew that I was a channel. She had Googled me at some point and found out that I was a channel. And so she understood what was happening during the sessions, because she could feel all the energy that was coming through. And anyway, this one day in May of 2011, I I started channeling the light language for the first time while on the massage table. And I didn't know what it was. I had never heard of a light language before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually a little bit self-conscious about it because I didn't know what she thought about it. And she later told me she was trying to figure out what it meant and whether it was Atlantean or whatever. And so that was the birth of me channeling light languages, was completely unintentionally. And what wound up happening was I didn't really do much with it after that. This came before the tones came. So the light language would come through in the beginnings of my my channeling again. I'd be channeling light language for a while, and then the creators would come in and say, "We're here for you." But it wasn't until a few years ago that the light languages really started coming through me again, when I wasn't intending for them to. I wasn't saying, like, because I just gave up getting massages shortly after that. That didn't work out with that massage therapist. So I kind of was like, I don't want to keep doing this. I want to keep falling in love with these massage therapists and have it not work out. So I stopped going to get massage, and kind of the light language kind of stopped. But then a couple of years ago, they started coming through a lot when I would just be in sort of a deep meditative state. And so I kind of decided to bring them back. And that's when I started bringing them back into my work, that's when I started hearing about a lot of other people speaking light languages too. So with those, I set an intention for what the light language is going to transmit, and then I just let it happen. It's easier for me than channeling in English.
Also easier to do when unrequited love is not a part of the risk. I mean, that's a lot of people go into massage therapy because they know that somebody's going to fall in love with them for doing it.
Really? I never heard that.
Oh, angle. Sure. Well, that's because you're in Maui, my neck of the woods. That's kind of a thing.
Oh, wow.
No, and you were, historically speaking, at least in my eyes, in light language before a lot of other folks were, and that's part of the. I think am I mistaken in thinking that it kind of comes with extraterrestrial communication? I mean, there is something about. Because look, I think, and you could think of angels as extraterrestrials if you choose to, but all the different kinds of higher realm extraterrestrials we talked about in the intro. There's something about light that is very important with them, light and love, and they're from this world, so nobody's going to accuse them of tree hugging or hippieing out, It is love and light, and we're talking about it using a radio, which is a light wave. People are looking this up on their computers. Microwaves, part of a light wave. There is this enchantment really between some of the extraterrestrial beings that we often talk about. Depending on who you're talking about, what the light is a big thing. So the light language would seem to kind of connect with that. Is that just me, or do you think that there is something between?
I think that there's a bridge that we're building right now, but because the ETs that we're going to start connecting with will either be all telepathic or they won't speak any of the languages spoken on Earth. Think about how many languages there are spoken on Earth. Oh,
right, yeah.
So what language would they choose, right? So there has to be a bridge between how we communicate now and how they communicate. And I think maybe light language is that bridge where we'll still need to be speaking in order to get to that place of telepathic communication. That's the real communication that's happening, or we won't know how we understand what they mean, but we will understand what they mean because we will have been participating in this light language that some people translate. Some people will translate light language into English, but I never have thought that was a worthwhile endeavor for me. So,
well, there are certain tones that you make, or kind of notes that you hit, if you will, while you're in the process of bringing up the channeling that resonate with me. And I think of it in terms of, and you mentioned telepathy. I saw this movie about a whole bunch of people that were tying in what the telepathy is all about, because that's primarily how extraterrestrials would communicate with us. Because, like you said, how many languages on this planet alone? You can't assume that somebody, in the Andromeda galaxy is going to know English full stop. I mean, it's just. Right. But there are things like, this is okay, this is not okay. I'm aggressive, I'm passive, that you can say with your bodies. And a lot of people that have had communications with extraterrestrials in their language, telepathically receiving it, would say it's very tonal in nature. It's more tonal. And they're not saying words like we say words. They're communicating ideas, and sometimes pages of ideas in a single note. And,
well, that takes you back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Which is
right.
One of the best movies about ETs ever.
Right.
If not the best. I mean,
if not the best, yeah.
ET and Close Encounters, same director.
Yeah. And it still resonates today.
Yeah, amazing movies, and the sound. If for those of you who don't remember, the sound is what the humans are using to try to connect with the ships that are about to land. And they come up with this series of sounds that sounds like and then there's like hand gestures that go along with it too, I think. But it is a form of communication that we definitely need to have more of if we're going to ready ourselves for the landing of ships. And
there was a thing, and I don't need to, because I'm excited about this. I saw this thing called CE5. It's a method of communication. It's almost like a remote viewing type thing. I think it's Stephen Greer or somebody that brings people out, and they're usually out in the wide open areas, New Mexico or Arizona or whatever. Yeah. But it's almost as though you send up into the heavens, if you will, your location. I am in this state, in this county, in this country, in this planet, and you widen out and you set your intentions for, this galaxy or this universe or, whatever. And then at the end of this telepathic communication that we're sending out, generally through our crown chakras into the heaven, it gets specific again at the end, where again you let them know, you widen it from planet to country to state to county to city to street to an imaging of the home and this and that, so they could better find you. And I don't know what my point about that was exactly, other than if you were familiar with that or not.
I've heard of it, and I definitely feel that one of the things that people need to understand about ETs is that when we talk about higher dimensions, those dimensions are not in other space. The dimensions are in the same space that we're in right now. So the sixth and fifth and all the higher dimensions above where we are right now are right here. They're just vibrating at a different frequency than we are. So we can't see them, we can't experience them, but they can still see us.
Yeah, my understanding of the Arcturians as a species in general, and again, this is the generality of them, is that they're interdimensional travelers. They're not physical travelers.
Well, so there's more than one Arcturian group out there.
Right.
There's a as I like to say, because my wife is Australian, there's a heap load of
I
Arcturians
like
out
that
there.
saying, yeah.
There's a
FCC likes that saying.
of Pleiadians out there. So anytime anyone tries to pigeonhole one group in a star system, for example, there are Martians. There are beings that live underneath the surface of Mars right now that look and act nothing like the humans that we have here on Earth. So you can't even lump all of the beings that exist in the solar system into one gigantic category. So yeah, there's different Arcturians, and some of them certainly are interdimensional, and others are non-physical. And the ones I channel are ninth dimensional, and the ninth dimension is a non-physical dimension. So they don't have bodies and ships, but they communicate with Arcturians who are in those dimensions that still have physicality to them.
Yeah, I tried to tie that down because I know we got people that are aiming for fifth dimensional living, that their imaginations get piqued when we talk about ninth dimension or a 12th dimension council that you also channel a 12th dimension. So I started thinking about densities, and sometimes this is a third density planet moving into the fourth density or perhaps even fifth. And that's not quite the same as a third dimensional person that's moving into the fifth dimension through the fourth dimension, and it will eventually perhaps be able to put their hand through a wall or levitate or something like that, because they'll understand the language of the empty space in these atoms. Everything is energy, everything is vibration, everything is tone.
Yeah, I think the density refers to the actual physicality of the matter. Mm-hmm. So it's literally becoming less dense. And that's the way to make sense of that. If you think about melting ice, you just put heat to it, and you're changing the density of the water that is at the core of what the ice is, and then the vapor and so on is the less dense version of it. So that's how I think of density. And when I think of dimension, I think about how if you talk about characters in movies and television, you say, "Oh, that's a very two-dimensional character," right. That character doesn't really. And then there are some great characters, like I remember Sipowicz from
NYPD Blue.
Yeah, I used to watch that show. I thought, man, this guy, he's just so multidimensional. Like he's got so
layered.
Yeah. You love those characters. You love those characters who surprise you, because they're this way and they're this way and they're this way so consistently, and then all of a sudden they do something that's completely out of character. As long as the writing is well done. If it's not well done, then you're what?
No, then that's a really good way to paint it.
Yeah. So
even in dimension and density, I think once you get to the eighth density or eighth dimension, it forms a new octave. It's like you've played, low C to middle C, and anything past the middle C is a new octave. So it's a new D, it's a new E, it's a new F. So it's like beyond the eighth dimension or eighth density, it's a whole octave of different dimensions.
Right. So we're basically here to experience a new version of ourselves. A version of ourselves that has more dimensionality to that which we've considered ourselves to be. Mm-hmm. And that's what the fifth dimension. And I think when you raise your vibration, that's what you do, is you hit that note of that version of yourself that we would call fifth dimensional. So it's not really a place, it's more of an aspect of who we are.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like being in a zone, because when you're in a zone, nothing and no one can touch you, I mean, everything you're doing is right on par with your greatest expectations and beyond. And you hit that level and it's like, this is so different. And in that fifth dimension, it's like being in a zone, except the colors are brighter. The colors are more vivid. The feeling is just more ecstatic, if you will.
Mm.
But it's something that is hard to match in just everyday three-dimensional walking, you know. And hit one of those points recently where you feel this kind of peace or you feel this kind of joy that is just beyond the normal. And, you know, it's hard to keep and hold on to that for a long time because it's just so much higher than you're used to that it stands out. And if you held it for long, it wouldn't stand out anymore, and you'd have to hit a whole new octave and go beyond the 15.
I feel like we sort of dip our toes into the fifth dimensional frequency range from time to time, and then we come back because we still, you know, are waiting for the rest of humanity to sort of catch up to that, so we can all do it together.
Now, I want to ask you this because now I have to be conscious of time. I think we've got about like 15 minutes or so. I don't know what the process is of channeling for you. I know that there's a couple of minutes of light language, or how long this process takes, and if we have enough time to do it. If we do, that's great, and we don't, that's understandable. I do want to mention, though, that you know, this book that you have out called Ascension. Maybe you should say, because you say shift better than I do.
Oh yeah, it's called Ascension, but then the subtitle is The Shift to the Fifth Dimension, and it's
I don't always hit that F right, you know.
It's basically a series of channelings I've done from the Arcturian Council that have a lot to do with the shift, but it's actually more than just about the shift. It's broken up into 7 different chapters, and each chapter covers a different topic. And all the channelings came out, you know, one day at a time over the course of a year or so, and just compiled them into a book. And it's a nice way to. It's a really good coffee table book. It's huge,
and it's layered like Sipwitz, you know. If you, it's kind of the Sipwitz of Ascension, because I've followed your work for a long time, you know, with the ninth dimensional, the 9D Arcturian Council, and it's always so timely and very inspirational. So you know, I don't know if we have a chance to get one in or not. And
of course. Okay. And you mentioned light language too. So there are 2 different things. If you want me to channel a little bit of light language first, then we can sort of end with the grand finale of the Arcturian Council.
Okay. Yeah, and for those of you listening, the light language is very unique. You know, and
each one is unique.
Each one is unique, and if you listen to it in the perspective of imagining what this light language with these notes are saying, because they speak volumes, it really puts you in a very, as a listener, a very creative place. It's a beautiful process, but those new to this, it's going to sound a little different than what we're used to. But to me, I mean, you know, these things resonate with me, so I'm just going to say that as we allow you to prepare us.
And I'll set the intention for the light language to be something that I think everybody wants, which is for everyone on the planet to feel more empowered and more peaceful and harmonious within themselves in the coming year. Okay, here I go. Telai tolo sura kanti katikilo petulum butekalai telai tolo tu hisikitilapai tulum tulu sikanai tarapotor petan aterapai taro koron dikalai tai utorapati komana kapatu hitikate potul petikitala petikal intikitala petikula putuwe bandikirapatikulam hitikitikola petikizikitulum tikire tiro tiro in rekatikola patikulum tiko
Hitikatipulipatikalsikatolum, tikilapatikulopatikitikolopatikitikolam, hitepotolo kitalapatai tolom tolo kitiksikaramanto, hisikatai tolopatakaintolopototi, tetti talamante koterapatikulopatikulopatoti tom noto, hisititi nolomatikulopet, hitalai nonokodo tintiko, hisikatibutolum, tetti de patukolopatik, hitikati tolopatikalapatokindiputoloptoti, tikalai tolom tiko, hisikitikitabulipitikulopatuko, tikan tikon nomotot, balakate la ponte la ko, hisikitipitum, tilikitikitikdun de la patikalisikadide no mundo la katikadipetolopotikalamanakalapu, Petikapatuko, Otixum de Guram de Cotu Pitikalamantilapetu, Sikipitolamantikapitikulam, Tikatilapatai, O Tikalapetikalapatulam, Tikati, the Manticosikiti, the Potolopatikalipitika, Pedakita, Potolo, Kita, Potela Pontica, tu Kitty, Polum, Dikiti, Petikalapetikatu, Petikalisiki, Potikalipitikitulu, Benini titi tonalmente che le paticalipiti che le potolopaticiti la manto benenche polonco sikitikitu in te on mente cotilopaticulamente che ti poricamente e se che ti chiede un bondiriti to hitikitikalne ni cotoloto o sikitipiti un trucco in te che ti Pondone molto cognente.
And now I'll bring the Arcturian Council in. Do you want to ask some questions, Chip, or should they just...
Well, yeah, if you wouldn't mind, it would really be an honor to do that.
Sure, absolutely.
Because I feel very blessed that we have an opportunity to welcome in our friends, the Ninth Dimensional Arcturian Council, and I have such high hopes for the end of this year and into next year. I feel as though our listenership are on the cusp of answering dreams or finding a path to the higher light in their lifetime, and some advice on how to help us all along and get there.
Okay, I'll go get him.
Thank you.
Greetings. We are the Arcturian Council. We are pleased to connect with all of you. Hello. We are ready for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, we're very honored to have you with us.
Yes.
And through Daniel, we've become very appreciative of your work and your words to us, which we're very inspired to hear.
Well, we are very happy to bring forth the transmissions that we do.
Well, thank you. I personally have very high hopes on behalf of our listenership.
Yeah.
Very honored to have the quality of listenership we have, and I really do believe that there is magic in the air for these fine and wonderful people on their path to higher places, to find better things for themselves in this world, and a more loving and understanding path. Especially as we're coming to the end of a year and the beginning of an exciting new one.
Yes.
Any advice you would have for our beloved listeners to help them enjoy this path and see the beauty in it?
Well, you have 3 events that are coming up on your calendar that are very close together. You have the solstice, followed by the Christmas holiday and celebration, and then the New Year's holiday and celebration. And therefore, you have people all over the planet having some sort of expectation for more light and love to come in. So the beings who exist in the higher realms, like ourselves, take notice whenever humanity is more open and receptive. And we do some of our best work around these times because we know that there's going to be more of the energy received and assimilated than during a normal Tuesday of your calendar. So yes, there's a lot coming. There's always a lot of energy around this time of year that you have coming up. And those of you who are attuning yourselves to the higher frequency energies all the time are making yourselves better conduits. You have more receptors. You are more open, less guarded, the less you're holding on to fear because of something that you saw on the news or because of something that you saw on the internet. The more open you are then to receiving that which is good. If you have your guard up, if you have all of your shields and protections up, then you're less likely to receive. And that is just the nature of the universe and how it works. You have to take it all. You have to be open to being vulnerable to having yourself hurt if you're going to also be able to love fully with your whole heart.
Yes. Now, as far as your inspiration to help us here, is there any advice you could give myself or our listenership on how to be in better contact with Arcturians?
Well, each star system in the galaxy has a different theme that is explored, and beings typically incarnate in different parts of the galaxy based upon what it is that they are looking to explore or to experience more of. So, for example, if you wanted to explore all the different ways that love could be experienced, expressed, felt, created, known about, you would go to the Cassiopean system.
Okay.
And if you wanted to explore the healing modalities, you'd go to the Pleiadian system. If you want to experience spiritual growth and evolution, you come for an incarnation or a cycle of incarnations in our little star system. So when you are on your spiritual path, when you are participating in spiritual practices, when you are more interested in your spiritual growth than anything else, then you're connecting more with our energy and our essence. Okay. And that's what you want to be in when you want to connect with us. You want to feel yourself as being in that meditative state, on that inward journey, and wanting to experience as much growth as you possibly can. And that links you up to us because that's the intention of our star system.
Okay. I only have time for one short question more, unfortunately, because we're almost out of time here. I'm very sorry about that. But as far as the affirmations of contact, if we reach out to you, if we send our intent through our crown, perhaps, and reach out to you, what are signs that we have succeeded? Would we see you in our mind's
Dreams.
eye, for example?
Yes. Mind's eye, yes. Dreams. You can feel for us. That's the easiest way to make contact right now. Everyone wants to see the ships and the fancy technology and the extraterrestrial bodies that are different from your own. And either that or hear a little voice in your head. But if you feel for extraterrestrial contact, that's the best and easiest way for you to make it, not to mention the safest. You will know by how you feel.
And we have to release fears of anything going wrong and reaching out the wrong.
You do. You have fears of extraterrestrials that come from experiences on Earth and your experiences in other parts of the galaxy where the planet you were living on was invaded, for example.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to use that in my further attempts to contact. But I have fears of my terrestrial boss getting angry because we might step over time. So I'm going to have to thank you very much for joining us. I hope we can do it again, and thank you for joining us. And we wish to have Daniel back for a couple of seconds if you would be so kind.
Yes, we are the Arcturian Council, and we have enjoyed connecting with you.
It's been an honor for us. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Kindness Beyond the Veil. This is your host, Chip Reichenthal. Join us each and every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern and Tuesday 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern on lnmradionetwork.com, Studio A, and every Saturday 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern on United Public Radio Network, uprntalkradio.com. Join us again next week. Meanwhile, wherever you're listening, hang in there. If you're hearing us on a Monday, the great Michael Vera is next. If you're hearing us on a Saturday, we've got some of the most awesome special and news programming on UPRN. So wherever you're listening, don't touch that dial. Please subscribe and donate. Ladies and gentlemen, our great thanks to Daniel Scranton joining us, danielscranton.com, for all information about the book, about readings and healings from him. And we have to have him back on again sometime, I hope, so we can learn more about teaching us all how to channel. We hope we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Daniel, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So sorry we ran to the very edge of time, but I'll talk to you after the show. We'll have to have you back sometime. And please join us again here on Kindness Beyond the Veil. But stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. And please subscribe or donate to this network, because we could surely use your help, especially over the holidays. Take care, everybody. See you next week.
Mm-hmm.